Initiating podcast download. Prepare yourself. Put on your spandex. Lace up your boots. Wrap your wrists. Hide your razor blade. Head to gorilla position. Grease up your hair. Apply baby oil. Okay, apply more baby oil. Get into gimmick. Keep your ears open and your mouth shut. Have fun and be safe out there, brother. Welcome to I'm on Wrestling. Now your host, Gregory Iron.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Iron on Wrestling with Gregory Iron. I'm your host, Gregory Iron. I am not a baby.
Pardon the interruption.
261.
Aaron Bauer's in the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to get that in real quick before you had a chance to have a dumb rhyme.
That wasn't
You
my
were going to
plan.
rhyme, and I know it. I see it in your stupid little face.
No, this is a very serious episode today.
Oh.
Because we're going to be reviewing the Mr. McMahon Netflix docuseries.
Didn't watch it.
You did. I watched the final episode just now with you because you were catching up. And originally we talked about putting this behind the paywall. But you know what? I thought to myself after I watched it, I don't think we should put this behind the paywall. We will have a bonus episode where we're going to talk about a variety of things that I'll get to at some point in the show today. But in my opinion...
You want to make sure we're recording?
Yeah, we're recording. There was
Okay.
audio issues last week. I don't know what's happening here, but anyways, after viewing the documentary,
Yes.
I thought to myself, I don't feel right putting this behind a paywall because while I will say this episode for the next 90-ish minutes, if you haven't watched the documentary, is very much worth your time, I would say for most, I don't believe this docuseries is worth your time.
Uh-huh.
I really don't. I feel like if you could probably listen to a podcast about it, like this one that you're, listening to with your earbuds or through a speaker of some sort, I feel like that is definitely some time that you should invest. But investing 6-ish hours, I don't think it's worth it.
I invested 6-ish hours.
Yeah.
I fell asleep at one point. That's why we had to finish
Okay.
watching today.
Mm-hmm.
But, no, it felt like it was kind of stuff I had seen before.
Yeah.
Stuff I had heard, stuff I had read, a couple different things, a couple cool backstage things. I like that kind of stuff. I don't know if you do, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Even the little things like Shane telling his sons to run out with him at WrestleMania.
I knew you were going to say that.
Why?
Oh, I got kids and I love them. Oh, I understand.
He's got 3 boys and I got 3 boys.
Yeah.
No, I don't know, just little stuff like that. But I didn't even think that was real.
What?
That he just went up and said, "Hey, would you guys do the honor of coming out to the ring with me?" Like spur of the moment, like that, because they all knew how to do his dance, coordinated at the same time, and it feels like they practiced that.
I wouldn't say it was coordinated.
I think they knew,
but he probably had enough faith in his kids that he's watched them do the Shane O'Mac dance, where he's just like, oh, just when I do what Dad does, do the Shane O'Mac dance and come down to the ring. It'll be fun. Also, I don't feel like he would have put his kids in that position if he didn't feel like they had the charisma to do it. Because that's what it comes down to, right? And I think what was his oldest kid at that point, like 12 or something, 13? And it's like, I think by that age, even with the younger ones, it's like well enough if they have the charisma to, make something entertaining, right? Like when your kids got in the ring with Johnny Gargano.
Yes.
We didn't stop it. It ended up being entertaining as fuck.
Yeah, we've never seen it though. It's never come out on DVD or anything.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that wild? Like, you would figure that would.
You would think so. They didn't put it on YouTube?
Nope.
Why do I feel like I've seen that since? Am I crazy?
Probably because there's a picture of it in my living room. But it's never been out there. I requested it from John Thorne several times.
I do think there's a lot of gems in this documentary. I do think it's a well-done documentary, but I think if you're going into it thinking it's going to be what you saw in the trailer, I think it's very misleading. In fact, and we're going to cover the whole thing, the whole 6 episodes, I feel like the majority of the trailer was actually ripped from like the last 2 minutes of the doc. So,
Yeah.
So I think that's very misleading, and we will expand upon that. I think there's some things that they could have expanded upon. I think there's some stuff they probably could have left out, and we're going to look at some written reviews of the thing so I can remember what happened where. Because originally I was like, you know what, we'll just improv this, go all over the place. But I feel like we might miss a lot of stuff because there's a lot to cover with 6-ish hours. So,
Despite you saying that people could miss it and it wouldn't matter.
I'm saying like there's probably a lot of little bad things and good things that we want to sort of analyze, right? Stuff that could have been better. So, do you want to begin?
Yes.
Okay. So the first episode is entitled Junior. All right, episode 1.
Hey, that's another thing. Let's start off with that right
Sure.
off the bat. What is the Junior thing? Because his middle name is not the same as his father's middle name.
You don't have to have the same middle name
To be a junior? Yes, you do.
Hey, you
You have to
don't.
have the same exact name.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
No, it is not.
Well, who says that?
I mean, I know. For
Why would you be Junior if your name's not the same?
It's the same first name. Is this a weird bit you're trying to do right now?
No, this is a legit thing. You
No,
don't
it's
have
not.
to have the same middle name.
In my job, I enter people's information, and I've seen dozens and dozens of people that have been a junior or a second or a third.
way.
You don't have the same middle name. That's not a
well,
requirement.
You can't be the second if you're not the same as the first.
Are you?
If it's Star Wars, and then Star Wars 2 comes out. Okay, Superman. And Superman 2 comes out. It's not called Superboy. Superboy 2.
I'm going to disprove you real quick. Do you have to have the same middle name to be a junior? It comes up right away. Wait, what? Yes, a male child must have the same first, middle, and last names as his father
Yeah,
to be
you
considered
idiot.
a junior. What? The names must be exactly the same, including the middle name. The difference between the suffixes junior and second. What are the names for naming? According to the Emily Post Institute, an authority on etiquette, the term junior can be correctly used only if a male child's first, middle, and last names are identical. Well, I just learned something new today.
Is this a bit you're doing right here?
Shut the I hate you so much.
Wow.
Okay, so I guess I was wrong and Aaron was right again.
I just don't get it, though. Like, that's not even the point. The point is, why did people call him Junior? That's not even his middle name. His middle name's not the same.
I mean, yeah.
I guess a lot of people are probably idiots like you, and we're just like, okay, well, he's got the same first name as the same last name as his papa.
So this all begins recording in 2021. There's over 100 hours of interviews filmed with Vince, his family, business associates, and some of WWE's most popular stars. You see people like Cody Rhodes, Rock, Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan. One of my favorite things right off the bat is, they're showing everybody preparing for their interviews. And they show Hulk Hogan combing his fake hair in a little mirror.
Yeah. What is that?
Why is he combing his fake hair in a little mirror?
Was he clowning or was he lying?
I think he was being dead serious for once. Like, that's the sad part. But one of the first things which kind of sets the tone in both good and bad ways in this documentary that we see is Vince says that doing an interview like this is strange for him, and he'll try to do the best he can, but he ends up saying something to the effect of, boy, I wish I could tell you the truth. Holy shit. And they're like, okay, tell us something. And he's like, no, I can't do that. So it's right off the bat, it's like, so what are we going to get here, right? Like, it's very strange right off the rip. And I don't know. I mean, what did you get the same feeling when you saw that line, or?
Yeah, I also thought like he said it's strange for me to talk about myself, but I bought the Playboy for the articles for the interview with Vince McMahon.
Yeah, of course.
Where he did an interview, what was this, over 20 years ago, 25 years ago or something, where he talks about being sexually abused by his mother. So, like, okay, so this is going to be rough compared to that?
Yeah, and I'll look at the fine details here, but essentially what I thought going into this is this first couple episodes, I'm thinking that we're going to get a extensive look into his childhood and growing up, and I don't know the exact time frame, but I would say that they maybe covered his childhood in depth for all of 15 minutes tops, 10 minutes. And so like what this documentary becomes really as you watch throughout, and this is why I was saying, like, especially if you're a diehard listening to this, which I can't imagine if like you're not a diehard fan to some extent if you're listening to this podcast. By episode 3, I started to think, really? The Monday Night War? We're
already there. I know. I felt the same exact way. But I hate to admit this.
I didn't think we'd be covering the Monday Night War in the goddamn Mr. McMahon documentary. Yeah. Because to me, it's like we're going to find, like, I thought there was going to be little nuggets of WWE stuff, but like... Yeah.
You thought it was going to be about Vince McMahon.
I thought the first couple episodes is going to be like, in any movie you ever watch, the hero and the villain, like their story goes back to their childhood.
Yes.
In a movie and in real life, like who we are right now, Aaron, it's like it's based largely on shit that happened to us as a kid.
Right.
And the older I get and the more that now I'm buying stuff for my house, I realize that more and more. And honestly, again, I've never been to therapy. I feel like just because of like all these, all this introspective stuff that I'm going through personally, it's like I really would like to throw what I think that I'm feeling based on my childhood, like back at someone else that's neutral, just to get some perspective here. Like I just bought stickers for my gym. Okay,
yeah,
like stickers to put on. I got a couple walls in the gym that.
12-year-old girls that are in workout gear.
That's not a thing. Oh. Anyways,
Topanga stickers.
Just
Winnie Cooper.
Winnie was great. Yeah, Wonder Years.
She was.
I have like a couple walls of stickers in my gym, and I started doing that because when I was a kid, I had stickers in my clubhouse. But one of the things that I don't know if I've talked about on the show, but I think about often, in my little clubhouse that I had in the backyard as a kid when I was like 6 years old, I had a bunch of stickers that I would put on my wall in the clubhouse. So that's where it comes from. But specifically, I had these wacky pack stickers that were kind of like Garbage Pail Kid stickers.
Okay.
And so from an early age, I was really enthralled by that type of like weird, gross out art. And in these wacky packs, one of the stickers that stuck out to me always, that I always remembered, instead of like Wheel of Fortune, they were parody stickers of like brands and shows and stuff. And it said Wheel of Torture. And I didn't remember exactly what was on the sticker other than a guy strapped to a wheel.
Yes.
Okay. I found that package of Wacky Pack stickers and I bought them. And when I got it and I looked at the Wheel of Torture sticker, it's got a woman in leather with a whip.
Yes.
While this guy is strapped to a wheel. And there's like a guy in like a hood overseeing the whole thing. And I started to think I was really drawn to this art. Like I would overly examine it as a kid and like art like that and just like weird ass shit. But then I started to think like, why is a 6-year-old child in like 1992 did A, I have this up in my clubhouse, and B, I was allowed to have it up in my clubhouse. Like no one looked at it and went, that's strange. So my point of this rambling is I thought for sure we would take a deep dive into like okay, he alludes to abuse. He alludes to incest, okay? And we heard in this Playboy interview back in the day that it's like, it's potentially with his mom. He talks in this documentary in this first episode about his abusive stepfather. He talks about Vince Sr. entering his life at 12 years old. And when they meet, it was like he had a glow about him, right? And and he thinks like this is his this man has come to save him from his abusive stepfather and his incestual loving mother, I guess, and in the trailer park. And then he goes to run up to him expecting a hug, and all he gets is a tap on the back. And it's one of those things where it's like, once they quickly move on from all this, my brain is going, okay, how are we glossing over this? Like, because, like, all right, if Vince Sr. was always this dude that was a promoter, how does he end up getting with Vince's mom? Why is she in a trailer park? Is she in a trailer park because that was the circumstances she had always been in, and something happened where she had a rendezvous with Vince Sr. and just nothing ever came from it?
Was she a ring rat?
What? Yeah. Was
yeah,
she,
that's what I want to know.
Or was she in a better situation? Was she with Vince Sr. And then they split, and then life circumstances led her to this trailer park? Who is this stepfather, and why is he so abusive? Like, and how is it possible with the budget from Netflix behind this that if Vince isn't going to give you that information, you're telling me in the world we live in today, 2024 obviously, but at this point, 2021, 2022, Rod, Vince's brother, had already passed away by the time they started filming this. He just died in January of 2021. How is it possible that no one took the time to find someone that went to school with him, someone that knew his stepfather, someone that knew his mother, someone that knew Vince Sr. maybe outside of wrestling? How is this even possible that we didn't find outside sources to kind of get a glimpse of like who Vince was? Not even Linda could give us some insight, like meeting this guy at 16 years old. Like, that's 4 years removed from him being in a trailer park and now knowing his dad, Vince Sr. How is this possible that no one latched onto that and gave us at least a full episode, but a couple, so we can understand the psychology of the man who grows up to allegedly become an abuser and do the things that he's doing on television, which is blurring the lines between reality and fiction and confusing both himself, apparently, and other people to who Vince and Mr. McMahon really are?
Look, I thought it was strange right away that Vince said he grew up one of several children. Where are any of these other children? And if they're all dead, he had no friends. There's nobody we can find that can give us anything.
Yeah.
There's not another family member?
Yeah.
A friend?
Yeah. Well,
his mom lived until she was 90-something, right? 98 or something? 106?
Past 100, I'm
yeah. So, yeah. I mean, and then that's another thing I was wanting to know. Like, why was his mother given such a long life? Like, was she very healthy? She lived in a trailer park. You would think that, she probably wasn't the healthiest.
He alludes to the incest thing. And again, he doesn't say directly that's mom in this, but we know from the Playboy article. At one point later in the episode, they cut to B-roll of him with his mom backstage at a WWE
wheeling
show.
her.
So,
right?
So there's still an active relationship up to her death.
Yes.
So like what? So why even open up these cans of worms if we're not going to elaborate upon these things and dig deeper? Because you would think a docuseries entitled Mr. McMahon, even before allegations, we would dig deeper into a man that apparently, as Triple H said, Vince is going to let you know what he wants you to know.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, how can we not try to dig beneath the surface? Because even though, there's a lot of trauma involved in this, there's also a lot of incredible success. And also, this man created a world that, millions and millions and millions of people fell in love with. Yeah. So, there's a genius, but there's also a madman. And I think with most geniuses, there are those both sides. And I just feel like we just scratched the surface of getting even close to getting beneath that. Yeah,
I feel like I didn't learn much.
But what we did learn, it's like it created more questions than answers, right? So pretty quick.
And then if there was this incestuous relationship with his mother, then how come there was no line drawn between that and then the proposed storyline between him and Stephanie? Because, again, that's something that was glossed over in the later episodes.
Yeah.
That he came up, maybe in episode 5 or something, that he came up with this story of him and Stephanie, him impregnating Stephanie.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know, did he draw that off of, maybe his mother said to him, hey, impregnate me?
Also, like, why would
Or
you
maybe
even,
he fantasized about that?
like, and I understand, like, well, that's the thing, too. And so that makes you wonder, right? Like, because there's, Vince is talking out both sides of his mouth in this documentary. And I know we're skipping ahead, and we're probably going to do this a little bit throughout as we cover these. But, like, is it one of those things where if you say you're doing it for the sake of the character and you can make it justifiable as a character, then you can enact your fantasy in real life, which is fucking weird. Like, I mean, there's a clip that surfaced after everything was coming out again where, like, he's, like, kissing Stephanie, like, a little too lovingly on the lips in, like, a backstage segment. For some reason, it didn't make the cut in this because, like, they really took some deep cuts with some of these clips.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it here. The promo around that time in 2003 when he's doing the angle with her for the I Quit match at No Mercy. He says, not literally, but I deflowered you.
Yeah.
And Stephanie gives him this look, and, like, the crowd's like, what the fuck? Like, why would you even use that verbiage? It's just such a weird thing to do. So one of the things we know that is also not touched on in this is, like, they didn't even talk about him going to military school.
Yep.
Like, why that even happened. Like, does he get sent off to military school just because his parents don't want to deal with him? Or was he actually a bad kid?
Right.
Another thing that I want to know, and you start to see this as we're seeing pictures of him growing up and maybe his older teenage years and definitely, like, him in his, like, 20s when he first met Linda. Vince was always kind of jacked.
Right.
As someone who loves bodybuilding and someone who is incredibly insecure, which is why I like bodybuilding.
Yeah.
I want to dig deeper into that because I think, like, knowing my psyche is the reason why he wants to be a bodybuilder because he's being influenced by these wrestlers that he's meeting. Is it because the insecurities that he's had because he couldn't fight back against his stepfather as a kid? Is it a little bit of both? Does he just like physical fitness? Like, how did we not even get, like, a bigger section of him, like, and him being a madman in the gym?
Creates the World Bodybuilding Federation.
Yeah.
Why would that be a thing that you went to? I understand football because the NFL is the highest grossing brand in the universe.
Yeah.
Sports brand,
Sure.
So, like, I get that, but bodybuilding? Nobody's paying money for bodybuilding, and you were going to do pay-per-views about bodybuilding?
Well, I think the idea was he could just take the same formula he did with wrestling and, like, create these larger-than-life characters in bodybuilding.
But he
here's the
said
thing,
no
like,
to UFC,
well,
which he ended up merging with eventually. I mean, again, skipping around, but
yeah. Well, you see, bodybuilding is fake too. I mean, in reality, right? Like, the winner's determined by, whatever judge likes what he sees the best, right? I mean, like, there's not really, you can't ever have a clear-cut winner.
yeah.
So, I mean, like, think that's maybe why it works for bodybuilding. I don't know. Who knows his mindset? Because, again, also,
But again, we don't get that. That's, I think, the point here is that we don't get why he's attracted to certain things or why he's drawn to certain things.
One of the early interesting things, so basically after he turns 12 and he meets Vince, and he meets Vince Sr., rather, and
He's not Vince Sr.
Well, I mean,
It's Vincent Joseph McMahon or whatever that guy's name is.
That's just the way it goes. Vince Sr., the first thing they bond on right off the bat is professional wrestling and talking about the business. But his dad never explains to him why they never met to 12, and he never asked, which, again, I feel is very weird that he would never do that. We figure out him meeting Linda at church, and we basically skip to Vince when he's in his 20s, and his dad sends him to Bangor, Maine, and kind of puts him in a position to where he's got to be the announcer because the announcer for the WWF at the time wants more money. This was one of the first intriguing things in this documentary that I couldn't believe they had. They had the audio from his first appearance on a wrestling program where he's communicating with his dad in the earpiece. Like, can you hear me, Daddy? Is everything okay? It's like, hey, Pops, like, are we good to go? And I'm like, and I know they started doing that in the 80s and 90s because we saw that start leaking out in the A&E documentaries and stuff. But very crazy to think that in the 70s they still had like the original feed. And it wasn't taped over or something where they
right.
They
How many times have we seen that old tapes just got taped over?
Yeah, because that was what they did in the territories. They didn't think long term, like 40 years from now, fucking some random people in Cleveland, Ohio, are going to want to watch Memphis wrestling, and like there's so many Memphis DVDs are missing. A lot of the territories were like that. We get a whole history of the territories again, by the way. Which again, if you're a casual viewer, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff you'll get out of this, but I also wonder, and I don't know if you have the same thought. A lot of people that I've seen online, it's like, well, this wasn't made for the diehard wrestling fan, right? Because again, if you're a diehard, I think there's a lot of shit in here that you already knew. But I also don't know if it was made for the completely casual viewer, because I feel like at times it might, in the middle of it, it's probably going to get boring for you because they just start covering storylines like Monday Night Wars and Vince and Austin, and it's like there's a little intrigue, but like if you weren't in it, I don't know if you're interested unless they're getting more nuanced as to like why these things were happening. And I think for me, it's like again, we're skipping ahead, and now that we're skipping ahead so much, I don't know how detailed we're going to get at this point, but like when they talk about the screw job in 97, why didn't we talk about like the mindset of Vince leading up to that, right? Like because I feel like that's some of the most interesting thing to come out of this is this would have been a great history of WWE with Vince McMahon inserting his insight on it, because that's probably the strangest and coolest thing at times is like when we're talking about WrestleMania 3 and hearing Vince talk about it. When we're talking about what a heel and a babyface is, the diehard knows who it is. The casual fan probably doesn't really understand the terminology, but to hear Vince say it from his lips is some of the most intriguing stuff of this doc, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just wish like we could have got more of his feelings in certain scenarios to really help us understand, which Bruce Pritchard says by the end, oh, I thought it was a hit piece and you didn't focus on Vince the human. Well, Vince made a decision not to let us focus on Vince the human, because had he give us more insight as to who the hell he is, perhaps maybe we could do that. Because I thought for sure, and I think we talked about this leading up to it, it's like I have a feeling they're going to talk in depth about his childhood and the abuse and the molestation and the incest, and we're going to have a sense of like, by the end, man, this guy fucking sucks. But also,
I see why.
Yeah. Like, look at all the shit he went through, and I just don't feel like we ever created that for him.
I didn't feel like it was a hit piece. I felt more than anything it was a WWE piece. It was a history of the WWE as narrated by Vince McMahon along with some of the top stars.
Which, again, I don't know if I want to get that feeling about it, because WWE didn't have final say on this. I think it started out with that, and then by the end, no say so. And it was great that they had complete access to the library and everything, but like, how do we not? I don't know. There's just so many things that I feel like unless it's left on the cutting room floor, if I had 200 hours with Vince McMahon, I've got a lot of fucking questions.
If I'm doing a documentary on Gregory Iron, and I come out with something where it's just like your history in the PWO,
yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, and I don't know. It's just not. It wasn't my cup of tea.
So, after Vince becomes an announcer, Vince Sr. Gives him a scenario where Vince Jr. can buy out the business. Okay. Mm-hmm. What I find interesting that, again, they just gloss over. Linda straight up says like they were robbing Peter to pay Paul. It was going to go to Gorilla Monsoon, but Vince Sr. gave Vinny the opportunity to buy the company. But all the while, they never raised funds like it's always kind of been portrayed. Mm-hmm. Linda straight up says in here, they were just taking the money from the profits of the shows.
Yes.
And then just giving it to Vince Sr.
Yeah. In order to pay off once every 4 months or whatever.
Yeah, like so like the $1 million or whatever you wanted, like that's how they did it. So like literally no effort other than just keep running the shows that I'm already running and then take the money from that and give it to me. That doesn't seem like,
Right.
Like, how does that work, right?
That doesn't seem like a good business move. But also, like, Gorilla was set to get it, and then my guess would be Vince Sr. was like, hey, Gorilla, you're going to get it as soon as my son fails. He's not going to be able to make the payments because they probably weren't making whatever Vince Jr. made with it.
Yeah.
So he had to expand in order to make those payments. And then also I wanted to know other things, like what was Vince's backup plan? You know, like what else? What was his other interest? Was he going to be a car mechanic or something if this didn't work out?
And I think like they tried to allude to that later, like the idea that I don't think they ever really came out and said it straightforward, but like, you know, with the WBF and with the XFL, which I feel like they focused too long on the XFL, like that felt really unnecessary later.
It felt like the part about the XFL went on longer than the actual XFL.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, you know, things that they didn't talk about. Like he tried to promote a Muhammad Ali fight, and he tried to promote. He did a pay-per-view with Evel Knievel that they didn't talk about. All this shit failed, and like I wish they would have asked Vince at some point, why do you hate professional wrestling so much? Why are you so like seemingly ashamed of it that you've always tried to prove like you're more than just this wrestling promoter? Because if he would have just embraced being a pro wrestling promoter, like, I mean, he's always going to be looked upon, despite the good and the bad, like the guy that made wrestling is what it is, and for that, in a lot of ways, a genius. So like, why not just
and a success?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why not just go with that?
Right.
You turned a $1 million investment into billions and billions and billions of dollars over the course of 40 years. So like, and again, ignoring for the moment all the misdeeds along the way, you created memories and moments for people to last a lifetime. Because again, I don't think it should have been part of the documentary or like as such a focus, but I'm watching this with my brother Zach, and like, you know, early on they're showing Brett and Austin at WrestleMania 13. They got the music behind it, and like they're painting the picture of like what wrestling is and storytelling, and I get the chills, man. And like I'm just like, oh, this is why I fucking love wrestling. You know what I mean? But like, it's not a WWE documentary. It's a Vince McMahon documentary.
I want to know why Vince thought the Undertaker would work as a character.
Yeah.
Or why he thought, you know what, we should have race car drivers and garbage men.
Yeah, like why in the 90s did you think that wrestlers had to have real jobs?
Yeah.
Why did that become the edict?
Yeah, what
like
was
Hulk Hogan didn't have a real job. He was Hulk Hogan, American hero. Right? Like Sergeant Slaughter, I guess his real job was that he was like in the military, which is like still pretty larger than life if you do it the right way, especially if you're in G.I. Joe. But why did you think you needed a guy who did plumbing, right? Like,
Tito Santana was just Tito Santana and way over for a long time. And then this era came in where everybody had to have an occupation, so then it was like, well, he's Mexican. We'll either have him work at Taco Bell or fight bulls.
He's a bullfighter.
Yeah. Let's go with bullfighter. Okay.
I often, too, now...
I wanted to hear about DiBiase. I would have loved to hear about Ted DiBiase.
They didn't even mention that.
Because Bruce has told the story that DiBiase was the character of the real life Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
I want to know, I want to know those things.
Well, and obviously I didn't expect them to talk about this, but I think about what would have the WWF looked like up until 99 if Gorilla Monsoon would have been in control. I mean, if anybody else other than Vince wouldn't have ran the company, I think wrestling looks greatly different. However, I do think that another promoter, had it not been Vince, would have eventually, broke down the lines and started trying to expand, because it just seems logical.
Yeah.
Like, why would you keep this mafia type system in place as you go into the 80s and 90s? It just seems like a weird thing.
Yeah.
Let's see what else in this first.
And then how did they get together with MTV?
Yeah.
And was that Vince's idea? Was that someone younger's idea who presented it?
So, right before we get to the MTV thing, one of the things that we've never heard from Vince's lips or from any WWE documentary, but Cody has alluded to, as he's planning to expand, he needs a centerpiece. He mentions Dusty Rhodes was the first person that he thought of to be that centerpiece. And it makes sense because I always look back at that run that Dusty had in the WWF against Billy Graham in, like, what was it, 78, 79 or something like that, where they had those 3 matches that sold out Madison Square Garden. Yeah. And it just seemed like Dusty was a perfect fit for the late 70s, early 80s WWF. But, you know, he never stuck around. And then, of course, apparently when this was pitched to him, Cody says in the doc that Dusty just didn't believe in that, which is
right.
Weird to think about because around the same time, if this is happening in 83, it's around the same time where JCP is like doing some pretty innovative stuff with Starrcade.
They did pay-per-view first.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So it's like that's weird that Dusty would have been like, especially with the mind Dusty
Unless
he had.
he meant Dusty didn't believe in crushing your opponents and going into other territories.
Yeah.
That's how I took it.
Okay.
Not so much that he didn't believe in the expansion
or that
in
maybe
the
didn't
mainstream.
Think Vince himself could do it.
Or yeah. He didn't believe in Vince McMahon. And that's why he came back in polka dots.
Of course, we know that Hulk Hogan.
Oh, you know what? Hold on. I had heard that it was going to be Dusty Rhodes if it wasn't Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
I also heard that the next in line was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Really?
Yeah, that Vince really liked Ricky Steamboat because of his look, because of his body.
That makes sense.
And he thought, okay, this is a good family man. We could get behind him. But really, Hogan was, there's no one better.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, it was perfect timing. He does the Rocky III movie, as we all know. And after that movie, he becomes, like, the ultimate babyface in the AWA. He's coming out to Eye of the Tiger. This becomes Vince's guy. And a lot of the guys from Minnesota, Vince starts stealing away as he's getting ready to expand the WWF. And Hogan beats the Iron Sheik January 23rd, 1984. We all know that story. We build up to the first WrestleMania, which, of course, Vince claims, which I don't think I've ever heard this before. He thought of it while on vacation with Linda. Linda wanted him to take a 2-week vacation for once and not think about the business. And then he comes up with this idea of a Super Bowl for wrestling, which is WrestleMania, which, by the way, JCP had already beat him to that idea, but I guess we'll just give Vince the credit for it and say that he came up with the a centerpiece for professional wrestling.
So while I was on vacation, I was watching Starrcade, and I was like, you know what? We need a Super Bowl of wrestling just like this.
And he also claimed that Vince Sr. didn't believe in the expansion the way that Vince Jr. was doing business, but by the time Vince was preparing to die at around 69, Vince Sr. claimed that those friends weren't really his friends, so, quote, fuck them all, Vince Sr. said. Vince says the day before his dad died that he told him he loved him for the first time. That was the only time that Vince Sr. had ever said that, and Vince said it felt good. He gets a little emotional and says he really cared about his dad and loved his dad. Tony Atlas then said, I don't really think he liked his father, to be honest with you, which, can I just say, did not expect this at all. Tony Atlas may be the star of this whole docuseries.
First off, he comes out, he's got no sleeves.
So he's wearing his
gimmick.
He's wearing his 2010s WWE attire of like cut off button up shirt and tie in real life.
Yeah, no sleeves. Yeah. And I go, man, they're going to portray this guy to be a joke. And turns out he might have been my favorite person in it.
So, and Tony wasn't like a tip-top guy ever, and I think that's another thing this documentary lacked, is having a more guys near the middle and the bottom of the card, like not guys who like maybe had it out for Vince necessarily, but like let's just get some other perspectives because I don't know if you realize this, if you're following the media with top guys that made millions and millions of dollars under Vince, they feel, believe it or not, somewhat of an obligation to still say nice things for this man. Why? Because he put them in a position to make millions and millions of dollars without taking the time to remember that, yes, Vince put the machine behind them, but it's their hard work and their own personal talent and abilities, whether it be on the mic or in the ring or whatever the case may be, that helped keep them in that position. One of the things that is coming to mind lately is Mick Foley doing an interview recently where he's basically saying, like, you know, like, again, I understand where he's coming from, but like he's thanking Vince, but then he's talking about, like, I've been trying to find an address for him so I can send him a letter to tell him how much he means to me and stuff. And it's like, man, that's really weird for you to be saying this publicly while has like strong allegations against him that he like shit on a woman's head in a threesome and was like physically restraining a woman with another one of your former colleagues. Like, it's just a weird thing to put out there. It's like, again, you and I both, we've worked with individuals that have done some really fucked up things where it's like, if that information was out there or when that information was out there, to then go out in public and be like, well, yeah, but like he did this for me, and like without being able to flip to the other side and go, but if what I'm hearing is true, then that's super fucked, and he's got what he's coming to him. Like, very few people, Bret Hart being one of them, has been like one of the only guys to say, like, yeah, like he
said,
sounds
"Go
like
to
a
hell."
piece of
I
shit.
hope he rots in hell.
Yeah, like it's just crazy. Like, but I can understand like where the loyalty lies with these top guys. But like, I feel like that's why it would have made it even keel if you got like more Tony Atlases on this documentary. Dr. D, they talk about him hitting John Stossel. Yeah. Why didn't we have Dr. D's perspective in this? Because they allude to the fact that maybe Vince went into the locker room and said, you know, boy, I really wish someone would put this guy in his place. Could we have Dr. D confirm that? He's alive. His brain is still functioning fine for as far as I know. You know, like, it's just weird.
Yeah, here's what I kind of think is that when you get into the wrestling business, you get in, most guys get in that are loyalists to it because they were always looking for acceptance.
Yeah.
And the biggest acceptance is to be accepted by and pushed then by Vince McMahon, believed in by Vince McMahon.
Sure.
So once you get to that, I think your loyalty is undying. I think Bret Hart's loyalty was the acceptance of his father, and his father probably telling him, you know, you're the best.
Sure.
So he didn't crave that from Vince McMahon.
No, but
I think it's like almost everybody else was looking for some kind of acceptance. But see, I don't know.
I don't think that's entirely true. I think Bret, like you'll find in this docuseries, many of the guys talk about how they looked at Vince as a father figure. I think if you watch past stuff with Bret, you'll hear him say that like he looked at Vince as like a father-like figure. But I think what happened in Montreal and then following that, what happens with Owen, I think that kind of changes Bret's perspective. And he starts to see Vince for who he really is. And sometimes these people in our lives that seemingly kind of do shitty things, you sort of just try to push it to the back of your mind because you want to focus on the good stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, like it's like when you leave a bad relationship and you sort of long for those wonderful moments you had with that person, right? You tend to ignore all the red flags and all the shitty stuff because you don't want that back. Yeah. You long for those moments that you feel like you can never experience again. I think that is kind of the case with Bret and Vince, which is a very complicated relationship. They talk in depth in this first episode about WrestleMania 3. Very funny for the first time to hear the attendance be kind of disputed between both Vince and Hulk and Dave Meltzer. And, you know, it might be 93,000. It might be 78,000. Some people think it's somewhere in the middle. Who knows? But WrestleMania 3 definitely changed the course of professional wrestling for the WWE at least. And I think that little segment of the documentary was very well done. They put Aretha Franklin behind the clips of WrestleMania 3. And, I mean, still a beautiful show. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I didn't see Andre versus Hogan until probably...
Yeah, that's right, because your first was Hogan and Warrior, right?
Yes. So Andre and Hogan, because of the WWF, always made it this mythical thing. So when I finally saw it when I was like 10, I was like, this match sucks.
Yeah.
It's really fucking bad. But I understand the spectacle about it. But I remember watching it, like, putting in the tape and being like, finally, I get to see this. And it's like horrible. And Andre's in bad shape. For some reason, the documentary, they claim that he got back surgery after, but he definitely got it before he even filmed The Princess Bride, because he's got the back brace. That's why he switches to the one singlet boy, because it's covering up the back brace. So I don't know like why they factually got that incorrect. Like, who is a fact checker in this thing?
David Shoemaker.
Who is that? I don't even know who that
Author.
is. Okay, I guess. What did he author? I don't even know.
Hey, I gotta say this: Dave Meltzer sounded the best I've heard him, maybe ever.
He was really good. Shockingly.
Just because I hate listening to his podcast or anything he does on YouTube. Yes, a lot of that and a lot of ums. Yeah, I remember one time you sent me something to watch of yours. It was like some promo you'd done, or maybe a podcast or something. This was, I want to say, 2010 or 11.
Okay.
And I came back to you with feedback, and my feedback to you was, you say an awful lot. I counted 72 times.
You changed that for me. So I'll do that in the podcast now. Like when we banter, I catch myself doing it all the time.
Right.
But this is more casual.
Yeah.
When I'm doing it, when someone is interviewing me,
Yeah.
I'm very conscious of that. And that's
Right.
because you reached out to me about that.
And then, in turn, because I was going to say that to you, I had to watch myself.
Yeah.
And I had taken a class. And in my class, they did an interview with me, and then they had me listen to it back. And I said 42 times because it wasn't natural. Whatever I was saying, it was supposed to be a class on doing interviews. So the interview I had was, there was a guy who played the role of Vince McMahon, and then I was me coming in to get a job from Vince McMahon.
Okay.
And I was lying through my teeth because I totally didn't prepare for this at all.
All right.
So it was a lot of I think I'm good because I'm going to work with Kevin Nash this year at what we call Resolution in Cleveland, Ohio. So once he played that back for me and I counted 47 ums and uhs, I tried to there I go again. I just tried to I try to change that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it separates an amateur from a pro. You know what I mean? And it's like again, and also if you're conscious enough about it, once you get into this and anything that involves media, you realize when someone asks you a question, particularly like in something that you know is going to be edited, you want to try to answer that by starting with, like, if you ask me, like, how did you start your career? I don't go, I went to a wrestling school. I'd go, I started my career by, so the question is being restated in your answer. So that way, if they edit it, like you figure those things out along the way. But basically this first episode ends with the triumph of WrestleMania 3. And then, but now the looming change in the industry as we enter the 90s, and maybe perhaps Hulk Hogan isn't going to be on top anymore, and perhaps maybe there's, I don't know, a giant ring boy scandal where they might be getting molested by various members backstage from the roster. So, and that episode is entitled Heat, and we will start talking about that heat after we take this quick break and pay some bills. And again, when we come back, I don't know how detailed we're going to be, because I feel like we could probably leave out, with the exception of a few snippets, I can't remember how to say it, from throughout the middle of the documentary. It just feels like at some times, and tell me how you feel about this before we go to break, it feels like they heavily edited the final cut of episode 1 and 6 because of the allegations. And then in the middle, it was like, we don't really want to touch this too much. We'll just kind of leave this like the WWE history piece that we created.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll talk about as much as we can in this 90 minutes when we come back. But before we go to break, just want to remind you that if you're not subscribed to the podcast on YouTube already, please do so. We want to get more subscribers before the end of the year. And make sure if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, Audible, wherever you download podcasts, subscribe so you get the podcast episodes as soon as they drop every Wednesday at 10 p.m. You'll get alerted right away, and you will get that podcast. Leave us a 5-star review wherever you download podcasts. It creates visibility for the podcast. And, of course, follow us on social media at Iron on Wrestling. And if you want to get bonus content, including a bonus episode this week, where we're going to talk about a plethora of things, including the launch of RVD's Only Wrestlers, among other things, last week's SmackDown, some Raw stuff, some behind-the-scenes stuff, stuff that we're not going to talk about on the regular version of the podcast. Go to patreon.com/Iron Wrestling, where for just $3 gets you in the door for a buttload of bonus content in the archives going back all the way to 2019. $5 gets you video. This week I just did an unboxing of the newest Hastel toys, which are the Hasbro-style figures that have been coming out recently. And $9, you get to be involved in the Zoom chat / StreamYard chat that I'm going to be doing this Saturday afternoon before my show in Buffalo, New York. I'm going to take time to sit down with you guys and give you at least an hour of my time. So if you want to talk to me directly, $9 will do that for you this week. I just sent out Patreon packages this week as well for the quarter, for those people that are subscribed for the $25 and up tier. And guess what, Aaron?
Tell me.
Some people got, wait for it, Playboys. Hey,
What?
I'm just saying that I had some. I didn't want them.
Why not?
It's not my thing.
Really?
And I think some of the Playboys I sent out just happen to have wrestling articles in them, which is probably why I got them in the stash
I
of
definitely
magazines.
had like 7 or 8 Playboys, but they were,
Interview with Jesse Ventura.
Yes.
Like, why?
But I got everything that had. I mean, I had all the Rolling Stones that had an interview with a wrestler, all the TV guides, all those things.
Patreon.com/Iron Wrestling. It's the best way to support the show. Check it out. It's worth your time. And we'll talk more Mr. McMahon when we come back. Aaron,
Two
my
clouds.
brother. What?
2 clouds.
What about 2 clouds?
Yeah, they're in heaven.
At TNT Health?
No. This is not TNT Health.
Really?
Yeah, you must look at next week's format sheet.
Well,
this week we're doing Juan of the Ortiz, and he's got 2 clouds that he's designing now.
Well, hold on. Wait a minute. Why can't we do both? Because sometimes when I use the supplements from TNT Health over
You
at
feel like you're in heaven?
TNT-health.com, I do feel like I've died and gone to heaven, but in the best way possible.
Okay, so there's 2 clouds in heaven.
Okay.
One of them has Mike from TNT Health,
Okay.
but he's not dead. He's just visiting.
Oh, okay. Wow, you could do
And
that.
he's giving supplements to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Wait, why can't we be there getting the supplements that we usually
We're
get?
there.
Okay, good.
But you and I are on the same cloud,
Perfect.
holding hands.
Which hand are you holding?
Left.
Okay. Why?
Yeah.
Why'd
Because
you
I'm
pick
afraid
that so
of your
quickly?
right hand.
Okay. All right, just making sure. And I would imagine that in this scenario, Mike on this cloud in heaven, in this T-shirt design that Juan Ortiz and Of the Dead Designs has created, which of course Juan and Of the Dead Designs have been in the industry for nearly 20 years. I would imagine Mike is giving me the creatine that I use on a regular basis while I was
he's
a
giving
human.
it to you, all right.
What?
And he's also giving me Rad 150.
Ooh, but also
I'm getting jacked as heck.
I'm hoping he's also giving me the other jug of glutamine for my post-workout recovery, but also the vegan protein that I've been using, vanilla, of course, and he gives me a nice tall glass of water to put that protein shake in because it's the only protein
Holy
that-
water, because we're in heaven.
Holy cannoli.
Yeah.
And all this is being designed on a T-shirt by Juan Ortiz and Of the Dead Designs. Who,
Juan can do anything.
When we were mortals, we witnessed
Mm-hmm.
him create artwork for so many prominent figures within so many of the major organizations of
Yeah, like
professional
The
wrestling.
Undertaker.
Yes, he works for the
Which-
WWE.
Yeah, who went to heaven one time. Remember The
He
Undertaker?
did,
at
live on
Survivor
pay-per-view,
Series?
yeah. Julian, Ethan Page, he has not gone to heaven to my knowledge, but I mean, like...
He's not going either.
He's got quite the heavenly body. He's never done a design for Jimmy Del Rey and Tom Pritchard. That's unfortunate. But Juan Ortiz has done so many designs for people in WWE, AEW, NXT, like the NXT champion currently, which they're debuting on CW this week. And he's had his designs on action figures and on Titantrons. So it's like, if you wanted a design from Juan Ortiz and Of the Dead Designs, you should probably reach out to him because he could save you $20 on your first design. He could even create a logo for you if you'd like. Anything for a friend, family member, loved one, anything of that nature. So you need to contact Juan Ortiz and Of the Dead Designs right now on Instagram at Of the Dead Designs. Go to their Facebook, facebook.com/Of the Dead Designs, or visit their website, ofthedead.com. Weebly.com or what? Ofthedead.weebly.com?
It's got to be a Weebly.
Okay. And then he's going to bring your artwork to life, but also if you're a mortal individual, Mike is going to help you feel just a little bit closer to immortality with some of the supplements over on his website, tnt-health.com. And what are you waiting for? You can save 10% with our promo code IRONON, IRONON. Is it confusing to mix two advertisements in one? I don't know.
I think I'm good with it.
Okay. And so
for right now anyways, and then we'll get feedback.
It's free to look on their website, but I suggest you invest in something because
at least just reach out and talk to Mike.
He will communicate with you. He wants to know what you're looking for in your supplements because he wants to help you on your fitness journey. So check him out. Give him a shot. TNT-health.com because it's about your health today, not tomorrow. Don't wait until you die and go to heaven.
No. Also, you could talk with me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I've been talking with Eric from the podcast, who is now a loyal member of the TNT Health family.
Wow.
He just
Congratulations.
got inducted. Yeah, so we're having a good time talking about eating egg bites and all that kind of good stuff. And our muscle cramps and how big our muscles are getting.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah. So what are you waiting for?
Yeah. It's about your health today, not tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
Weebly.
And we are back, and
man, those were some good ads.
Well, I'd like to think so. A little
Hey.
two-in-one special there.
Speaking of good, how was that steak today?
Hey, you listen. Third
And the
Base,
fries.
who does not sponsor us but should, so they can give us free steaks every Monday when we record the show. Delicious.
And if you're going to be a guest of this show, that's probably a sell point, is that we buy you one of the steaks with fries and coleslaw from... I've never even eaten the coleslaw. You?
Nope. Never
No.
once. Don't need to.
Yep.
Got that steak, baby.
Yeah, so if I was a food reviewer, I'd review that and give it 10 out of 10.
So,
Tell me.
I kind of combined a little bit from episode 2 into the last episode because I talking about WrestleMania 3 and blah, blah, blah. I kind of skipped over the whole unionization attempt by Jesse Ventura that they bring up.
They did.
Vince basically said that no one ever backed Jesse anyways, which is kind of funny. I don't know why he was so dismissive, like no one liked Jesse Ventura or something. And for the first time, Hulk outed himself as the stooge.
Yeah.
That we always knew he was. So that
He
was
told-
all very
Told the
interesting.
truth. I almost thought, he must be lying. It must have been someone else.
Yeah, I ran to Vince. I told him Jesse's trying to form a union.
So he must have walked or something, because there's no way he could have told the complete truth.
No. WrestleMania 3 happens. We all know the deal. Andre. However, Vince did say, which I was shocked by, he did claim that Hogan didn't know whether or not Andre would take the fall or not. But a part of me feels like that maybe Vince and Andre were just kind of working Hogan.
Yeah, or Vince kind of thought that was the better story, so let's just go with that one.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is a good story, like that Hogan didn't know if he was going to win or not.
But I also don't feel like Vince is watching podcast and archived interviews to know that that's the story that Hogan has chosen to go with.
But there's gotta be people that have told Vince,
Maybe.
hey, man, through the years, Hogan said he didn't know who was going to win.
As WrestleMania 3 occurs and it's a monster box office success, of course, merchandise is being sold like crazy. The schedule for touring picks up. These guys are on the road constantly, 7 days a week, sometimes 2 or 3 shows a day.
I feel like that's how it was before that, though.
It was. That's the
Okay.
thing. They act like it's some sort of magical, it's never been busier. But it actually was busy. They just made less money.
Yeah.
But again, this is another thing I wish they would have went into. Sort of delved into at various points about guys having this drug problem. Can we ask Vince about, like he was asked in previous interviews, do you take any accountability? Why did the road schedule have to be so vigorous? We know now, the road schedule is a lot lighter. Ticket prices are a lot more expensive. Why couldn't that just be the deal? Want to come to? I know the idea in the 80s was to try to get families into the show, but why couldn't we price tickets a little bit higher? And why did we have to do so many shows? Did you see, by chance, front row ticket prices for WrestleMania 41?
No, I did not not see.
If you had to guess how much a front row ticket to WrestleMania 41 is going to be, what would you guess?
It's got to be 4 figures, right?
I want to hear your guess. What do you think?
I'll say $3,500.
You think $3,500?
That's just a guess.
Okay, you're wrong. Guess again.
$5,500.
Ha ha ha! Very funny. Guess again.
$9,000.
I wish it was that cheap.
$6,900.
That would also be a great deal. But
$10,011.74.
Boy, that would be a fraction of the price that they're actually listing.
Are you kidding me? It's more than a car?
I'm not kidding you.
Wow. Well, they're going to end up having to move people up.
What?
Nobody's going to pay that. Whatever it is, you get a car. If you're not going to buy a $100,000 Trump watch, then you're not going to pay for WrestleMania tickets.
The Elite Package.
What?
Front row. Elite.
Young Bucks have their own package?
No, it's the Elite Package, front row. So apparently for the first time ever, as part of being a front row ticket holder, you also get like a bunch of, VIP perks. Row 1 for both nights of WrestleMania 41 will only cost you $50,000. That's right, folks. $50,000. But if that's a little bit out of your price range, don't worry. They still have row 2 and 3 available for $27,000 and $30,000 respectively. So that's what we're looking at. And if you're thinking to yourself, who would spend $50,000 for a front row ticket to WrestleMania? I want to also inform you that they've already sold out front row for WrestleMania 41.
Gosh.
Yeah. So just throwing that out there.
Man. And then you're going to have to do a run-in, jump over the barricade,
sure.
Run in when the heel is getting heat. So then you're going to get thrown out, go to jail.
Yeah. That happens.
Wow. So that's going to be more money.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot. All right, well, episode 2.
Well, they couldn't...
let's stay focused.
They couldn't charge that much back in the 80s. But, Vince and Hogan were kind of like a tag team, right, behind the scenes. Hogan would be out doing the shows and drawing the money while Vince was in the office working around the clock to keep things moving. But in reality, Linda was doing a lot of that work, too. Vince and Hogan around that time, they locked themselves in a hotel for a couple days and write No Holds Barred. Again, I wish they would have talked a little bit more about Vince to why did you guys need to lock yourselves in a hotel for a couple days? And what got you through that couple days in the hotel while you're writing the script? Anything in particular?
No.
What?
No. Vince grilled chicken breast.
You think he just ate grilled chicken breast to get him through this?
Yeah. What do you think Vince
You
used?
think it was just grilled chicken breast that helped him come up with the line, "What's that smell, Dookie"?
Well, probably what happened was Hogan went to the bathroom, much like you do here during the podcast when we take a break.
Yeah.
And then you come out and it smells so bad, and I go, "Whoa, what's that smell?"
It's been bad today. I just want to put that out there.
Is it the creatine or?
I'm not really sure what's happening right now.
Are you back on the energy drinks?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. They talked briefly about WrestleMania 6 and Hulk Hogan's fading star, which I don't necessarily agree with the star fading in 1990. I would imagine once the allegations start coming out in 91 about steroids, that's when it really starts to fade because people are questioning. I know, crazy for 1991, but they're questioning the honesty and integrity of Hulk Hogan. That's where it really began. But they briefly touch on Ultimate Warrior. They don't talk about Savage, but basically they make it seem like all they could do was maybe give Hogan the ball and then someone else would drop it and they would give it back to Hogan up until he decides to leave at WrestleMania 8. They do cover WrestleMania 7 briefly. They talk about the Gulf War. And I don't know, Vince kind of tried to justify his using of the Gulf War during that time period, and like he acted like there was they couldn't backpedal, right? They started it and the war wasn't happening, but then it did start to happen. It's like, well, we're already doing it, so let's finish it. What?
The show must go on.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that later too. Yeah, they say they talk about also all the stereotypes in the world, where basically like if you weren't American,
Yeah.
then you were just a bad guy.
Yeah.
Bruce
I'm glad they
Pritchard-
were honest about that.
Bruce Pritchard talks about how that was always portrayed in the movies, anyways, and not that it makes it right, but that's the way it was, and
And it was that way back then.
that's true.
I didn't like anybody foreign.
That's true.
And I have ancestors that are from foreign countries.
Yeah, yeah.
You do too, as we all do as God-fearing Americans.
Sure. Oh well, what? We all want the same
Red-blooded
thing.
Americans?
We all want the same thing, you know. We want God back in our schools.
We want our borders
We
closed.
want the borders closed. You know how that is. Just like everyone.
And we all want to drink beer.
Yep, that's
Doesn't
all.
matter if you're black, white, gay, straight.
That's the Hulk Hogan way. They talk about Dr. Zahorian coming into the fold, which he'd been around for years, but now all of a sudden, we're coming to the realization that he is the guy giving the boys their candies, which, some might say that he overpriced it a little bit. They didn't talk about that, but I remember hearing an interview with the Warlord saying that he didn't even buy it from Zahorian because he would jack the price like 4 times. So he had to go find another guy that was like a clean.
The Warlord was a user?
I know it's hard to believe, but the Warlord was a user of the steroids, and I wish they would have delved. You could have delved into the whole thing about like Zahorian coming in the company, like his ties with everything. They do talk about.
And
the
why
trial,
did Vince pick
obviously.
him as the company doctor?
He didn't.
Okay.
That's the thing. That's how they get away with it.
Yeah.
Which I don't think they really delved into, but from my history of reading about it, and famously one of my favorite books, Sex, Lies, and Headlocks, he never gets hired as the doctor officially. Linda McMahon, because she socialized with people, she was tipped off at some point that the feds were looking at Zahorian, and they actually were about to hire him as like a doctor, but once they heard, they're like, nope, let's not have this guy involved anymore. Had they hired him, that might have fucked up their situation when they went on trial, because then that would have showed like, oh, it seems like you guys had intention, like you put him on the payroll. So that's a whole thing. And of course, at the same time that they're gearing up for this steroid trial, the WBF is a thing, so like now that's creating a problem. And of course, now we're starting to hear about some of the sexual scandals, one of which in this episode, which I think might be the most damning incident in this whole documentary, and the thing that I found most interesting, when they start talking about Rita Chatterton coming out in the 1990s about the situation with Vince. His exact line when asked about Rita Chatterton, which I believe this is the first time on record he's ever said this, he basically claimed that the relationship was consensual.
Yes.
Which I don't think he's ever stated they actually did do anything with Rita. But then he said something to the effect of, if you are accused of rape, then you become a rapist. And, if it was rape, the statute of limitations had run out anyways. What?
Yeah.
Now, mind you, it's important that Bill Simmons, it's important to know Bill Simmons came out with a podcast, which I've heard bits and pieces of. It was right before the doc dropped. And he talked about how Vince would always show up like on his schedule, would be hours and hours and hours late. And when he would show up, he would have a bunch of handlers, one of which we find out is Paul Heyman, because we hear him off camera for one of the things. And if you have the caption on, if you don't know that it's Heyman's voice, it says Paul Heyman on the screen. How is it that no one was like, no, and maybe you don't say statute of limitations ran out on rape. And again, this was done in 2021. Wasn't too long after this that all of a sudden state of New York drops that for a year so the Survivors Act can be in place, and then these women can file lawsuits against people that, might have raped them. And then within days of the lawsuit being filed, coincidentally, Vince just pays off Rita Chatterton an unnamed amount of money. So, your thoughts?
I don't know what to say about that. I mean, he certainly looks guilty.
Yeah.
But I want to know what led to it, though.
The incident?
Yeah, like how many incidents? Was it an actual affair? What are Vince's thoughts on it? I don't know that he can talk about it, though. Probably not, right? Maybe there's what's Tony Khan famous for, which also Vince's, what do they call it?
The NDA.
Non-disclosure agreement?
Yeah.
NDA, yeah.
Well, the story that Rita Chatterton has put out there, which again wasn't in this documentary, but it was something to the effect of like, Rita hadn't been getting booked. She was trying to get a regular gig, something to that effect. She went backstage at one of the WWF shows in somewhere in the New Yorkish area, Connecticut. Tried to talk to Vince. Vince said he didn't have time, but you should come out to eat after the show.
What was she a particularly good-looking woman?
So I don't think it's actually on the network, but there is an episode of TNT where she's on it, and they show a clip in this documentary. And I mean, she wasn't too shabby. No, I got no problems with 1986 Rita Chatterton. And but she gets invited to this eatery after the show. Apparently, Rita tries to bring up the whole ref thing while all the other guys are there. Vince kind of puts the ixnay on it, and then essentially he's like, afterwards as they're leaving, like, we'll talk about it afterwards. He invites her into the limo. And that's when everything happens. They go into the limo. He starts forcing himself on her or whatever. Tries to make allegedly tries to make her do oral. And then at one point, Vince had told her in the past that if you ever got involved with one of the wrestlers or anybody involved with the wrestling, then that would be your job. So after she refused to do what she was going to do, and Vince made her do it. Allegedly, she claims that Vince then said, "Hey, remember when I told you that you weren't allowed to do anything with anybody involved with wrestling? Well, that includes me, and you just did something with someone in the wrestling." So, just a super fucked up thing to do.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at on that.
I'm sorry, where are you at?
I don't know. I don't know much about it. It's an ugly situation. And you said that Vince said he, now you're fired because you got involved with somebody in wrestling or something.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when they were telling Stephanie not to get involved with a wrestler, but Vince was basically setting her up with Triple H.
Yeah, well, like that was weird.
Yeah, that's episode 4. I think.
You should fuck Triple H.
You think he was saying that?
I'm sure he doesn't say it like that, but I mean, who knows at this point, honestly?
Well, he's wearing a Vincent Kennedy McMahon mask.
Oh yeah, no. I'll save that for Eric Bischoff.
Yeah.
So
they didn't talk about that.
Listen. There's a lot of weird shit.
I would have liked to have heard what was the thought process going on there. Like,
right.
I want Bischoff to experience the same kind of trauma I had to when I had to kiss my wife.
Yeah, it's very and
who's
also,
the least attractive McMahon?
Probably Rod.
Oh no.
What? Oh, what?
The ones that are in WWE. And why did Rod never get anything in WWE or any of his other siblings?
Currently, who's the least attractive McMahon? It's got to be Vince. I mean, honestly, he's aged very poorly.
Still built.
Linda looks fine.
You think so?
She could still. I mean, compared to Vince,
maybe if she grew her hair out more.
She looks fine.
I think she should pencil in a mustache.
All right. Some of the other controversies that are covered, Tony Atlas talking about how women would just use, the men would use the women like toys, not elaborated upon. Wish they would have kind of spoke more about that.
Yeah.
They talk for about 2 seconds about the situation with Jimmy Snuka murdering his girlfriend and how Vince probably covered that up. Don't elaborate that on any further. When they start talking about the Ring Boy scandal, they do go in more depth than I would have thought based on the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about Mel Phillips being a pedophile. They talk about Terry Garvin. They even
Those things are like you said, glossed over. They're mentioned briefly, and those are things that seem more pivotal to the Vince McMahon story.
Yeah, like I mean, I wish they would have talked to Vince and again had a new interview of him trying to talk about what he knew about the Ring Boy scandal. Like, there's information out there that, Vince knew this stuff was happening. It's not like he didn't know it was happening. There's been stories about it and everything, and a story specifically about Vince, I think, telling Meltzer, because he used to communicate with Meltzer, that he knew Mel Phillips's deal, which is why he fired him, but then hired him back on the pretense that he just couldn't be around kids. What? Hello? What was WWF marketing to in the early 90s there? How's that even possible?
Yeah.
So, they talk about the Tom Cole situation, which, of course, Tom Cole's unfortunately committed suicide in the last few years, I would imagine. Probably. It happened coincidentally around the time that Pat Patterson passed away. I think his brother's been on record to say that might have something to do with it, because Pat was getting all of this, adoration and adulation. Is that the word? And
either one.
Yeah, I just make up words that you give me the real one. You could do a whole 6-episode series on the Ring Boy scandal, honestly. They talk a lot about how the media really didn't take it that serious because it's just fake wrestling, which I get that. But it wasn't until the federal government started going after them about the steroids that business starts to pick up, as JR would say. And they kind of lead you. They start talking about Ted Turner and Eric Bischoff and WCW and stuff, and how Hulk Hogan goes to WCW. This is where I start to think, like, why are we going to have to go in depth about all this stuff? Like, it's kind of weird. And little do I know they're going to go in a bunch of detail about the Monday Night War, which I feel like is unnecessary to this documentary. And they end on the cliffhanger of, like, what is Hulk Hogan going to do on trial? Is he going to be for or against Vince McMahon? And so that's how episode 2 ends. Where did you start to feel like this documentary was the same old, same old?
This episode, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple little things, but again, they didn't go into deep enough detail on the things I wanted. And once we were getting into the Monday Night Wars, I've already watched that documentary.
Yeah, I watched the one they first came out with in like 2003 on DVD.
Yeah.
And then I watched the whole series that they put up on the network. It was one of the first things. So,
right.
Didn't need to see that again. Also, they've covered it like in a couple different documentaries on A&E.
Mm-hmm.
They did an NWO one where I got to hear the whole story fucking again. They did an Eric Bischoff one where I got to hear the whole fucking story again.
And it's interesting, but I didn't need it in this because I wanted to watch a Mr. McMahon documentary.
Steroid trial happens. Hulk Hogan supposedly is given immunity, and he's totally on Vince's side. But for some reason, Vince still has heat with him over that.
Yeah, I want to know that.
Also,
again, I didn't find out anything about that. Why is Vince pissed at Hulk Hogan?
Also, here's again Vince talking out both sides of his mouth. It's like he talks about when Hogan goes on Arsenio, how he lies. And Vince is like, just tell the truth. It's just so much easier. Mm-hmm. Why would you lie? But then, like, later, he's talking about how Shane's talking about how he's like roughhousing with his dad and stuff. Yeah. They play wrestling, and then Vince pulls his hair and like grabs him by like the fat of his tummy, and then goes, and he goes, "Oh, you cheated, Dad." And he goes, "I always cheat, and I always win. So learn to cheat." And so like Shane's like, "So I learned from an early age to cheat," and it's like, wait, what? So Hogan, don't lie. You're just gonna make it worse. But also, hey, Shane, my son, cheat. I can't even imagine like my dad teaching me. Like, I mean, my dad was no saint, but I can't imagine him like, oh, you got to learn to be a cheater.
Yeah.
To be successful. Like, what?
Yeah, that's probably the least. I don't know. It's not that bad.
Really?
Yeah, I just don't think so. If you're a competitive guy, there's an old philosophy in sports that if that you're not trying if you ain't cheating. Yeah,
but like when you're painting this bigger picture in the documentary, though, isn't there like, isn't it a little strange that an adult dad would sort of instill that in a father or in a son that's young enough to play wrestling with. That seems strange. I mean, I don't know, like, because if I'm a kid and I'm told to cheat, and that will just make my life easier and I'll win, then maybe I go down this road of like, I mean, look, I probably would have done it anyways, but like now I'm more apt to like copy off someone's paper.
Which I still don't even have a problem with.
Take credit for. I understand that, but I'm just saying, like,
I think during COVID, when my kids had to do that remote learning, like they just had a phone next to them. And so when their teachers were like quizzing them and stuff, they were just looking at all. That was the best thing that came out of COVID, was that everybody learned to cheat and do things better. When I was a kid in school, and maybe it was like this for you, every teacher said, you cannot have a calculator.
Yeah, I remember all that shit. Like, no calculator. Like, why?
Now we have one on. Everyone has one on their phone.
But that's dumb. It's not like in life. It's like if you're at the store and you couldn't do some math on something.
Right.
If like someone like waiting for you to get the right answer wouldn't be like, oh, you don't fucking. Are you reaching your? Don't fucking even put. I see you got a calculator.
Yeah.
Don't make this easier.
Every person at the register. The register's a calculator.
Don't make this easier.
Yeah.
I swear to fucking God.
What we want you to do is to try to figure this out in your head, and take a long time. Also, I have to say this, and maybe this is part of my reason for the whole cheating thing, is that I remember my oldest son was in a baseball slump. Okay, he hadn't gotten a hit in a while. He hadn't
corked his bat.
Yeah.
Oh,
remember
man.
that when Albert Bell and anyway, that was one of the great stories of all time too, because a pitcher for the Indians that was not particularly like a star pitcher crawled through the
did
air
the whole
vents.
Mission Impossible deal.
Yeah, and then went and stole the bat and replaced it with another one. But I think he replaced it with somebody else's baseball bat that had their name on it, so you knew it wasn't the Albert Bell bat. It was the what was that guy's name? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
He was a first baseman. Anyway, okay, so my son was in a slump, and I remember a pitch came inside to him, and it looked like it may have hit him, but I knew it didn't. I was coaching third base, and my son looked down at me when the umpire said, "Did it hit you?" And I gave my son the nod, right? And he turned and he said, "Yes, it did." And the umpire said, "Okay, take your base." And he ended up coming around to score, and that broke him out of his slump. I wasn't doing it to win or to lose. I was trying to get my son out of a slump.
Sure.
But we cheated, and I was okay with that.
But I just think in this particular story, I think, what you just described is like a very small white lie, right? A fib in a baseball game.
Okay.
What we're describing is a man who, in one example, potentially might have raped a woman, and so he
we're
he
talking
lied
about here
and
is that
cheated.
he told his son, he pinched his son's fat in order to win the wrestling match.
Yes, but I think there's a deeper meaning behind I cheat and I win.
Yeah.
Also that's another thing too. It's we as smarter fans know that Linda and Vince have been estranged for a while. Vince himself has admitted, at least in the Playboy article, which again they talk about, but I feel like they don't even delve in deep enough into. He admitted to affairs.
Yeah.
Why wasn't Linda asked about these affairs and how that made her feel? How they worked through that? Because again, this all goes back to the end with Bruce Pritchard being like, "I thought it was a hit piece, and I didn't talk about the human side." Again, it doesn't seem like anybody was given the opportunity to reveal what human side of Vince they actually knew.
And if there is that footage out there, if they were asked, if these questions were asked and were answered, they weren't allowed to use it for whatever reason.
Yeah. This episode focuses a lot on screw jobs, as entitled Screw Job. It starts out with the Wendy Richter screw job of 85 that we often don't talk about, between Moolah and Wendy, where they take the belt off of her.
Man, and that was just the quick count, and the shoulders weren't really down, and that was a terrible one. At least with the sharpshooter, you could say, this guy submitted.
I still don't understand how she didn't know it wasn't fucking Moolah. Like, I understand that they didn't have to communicate much back then, so in theory they could have like never talked and just went to the ring. But like once you're out there,
and you've wrestled that person,
she trained her.
Yeah,
I feel like
I feel like they were like, hey,
if I would have gotten the ring,
going to be under the mask. It's going to be a big surprise, but you're still going to win. Like they could have said that, and I would believe that.
If I were to not talk to my masked opponent that night, and then I got to the ring, even in the back, I would have been like, huh. My masked opponent looks awful like JT Lightning in my trainer.
Yeah. Or like if you and I were to wrestle, like we've only been in a ring with each other a handful of times, a couple times.
Yeah.
But I still think that you would know my body type.
Yeah.
And how I smell.
Yeah.
And the taste of my sweat.
Mm.
And
yeah. All right. I'm trying to not get turned on during a podcast here. So they talk about how Bret is basically given the ball during this time frame as well, based on the fact that we're going to lead up to the screw job at the end of this episode, because, you could trust in Bret Hart that he wasn't going to be found with like an underage kid or, he wasn't going to be doing a bunch of drugs. They talk about briefly how they tried to give the ball to Lex Luger and it didn't work out. Bruce Pritchard loves burying Lex Luger for some reason. Yeah. Lex Luger, in his more recent podcast, has been nothing but kind, despite knowing the numerous bad things that Bruce Pritchard has said about Lex Luger. And look, maybe he actually was a dickhead back in the 90s. I don't know. But, like, man, he really, really, really buries Lex all the time. And, they talk about your basic Monday Night War stuff, blah, 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 blah. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash going to WCW. We've been there, done that. The curtain call. This was a little bit interesting, like, because they had to explain kayfabe. So for your average viewer, like understanding like why kayfabe might have been important. Mm-hmm. Shawn Michaels says he didn't understand around that time why kayfabe was so important to everybody. Yeah. I think the Clique in a lot of ways were sort of ahead of the curve. And I mean, it is what it is. I remember when I saw the curtain call, like, when they finally showed that footage on Monday Night Raw, I was like, oh, it's fucking cool, right? Because I wasn't a dumbass. But there are still those people, like
when
in the
documentary. When did they show it on Raw?
Around the time where they were forming DX.
Okay, so it wasn't right after it happened?
No.
Okay.
No.
See, I don't remember, because I remember reading it in the sheets.
Sure.
I read it in the Torch. It was on the cover.
So I had heard about it, but I didn't think there was footage of it, right?
Yeah,
and I don't even know when they realized that there was footage.
Well, because there was no phones,
right?
Yeah. So,
but like I don't know. There's still guys in the documentary like Undertaker was like, I hated it, like I thought it was stupid, and I just heard Jim Cornette talk about it on the podcast, and he was talking about how he. Like him and Gerald Briscoe were like kicking their fucking bags down the hallway, and like it's like it's wild that like I guess I can understand like why they were upset, but it's wild that they were that upset where they were like, "What the fuck? The industry is falling apart." Because it's like it almost feels like, I mean, I was a kid, I was still like very young back then, but like I don't know, I can't imagine like your average fan around that time, once they saw the curtain call or things like that, being like, fuck the business, I can't watch this anymore. Because again, when I found out wrestling was fake, there wasn't this moment of like, I can't watch this anymore. It was like, I just kept watching it. And I guess that experience of finding out it's fake is different for everybody, because I've heard other people been like,
I found out, my dad told me, I watched, I was like, oh, okay, I still am holding out belief that it's real.
Yeah.
And then I remember, like, my mom's best friend, her name was Arnett, and she told me, well, the WWF is fake, but World Class Championship Wrestling, the Von Erichs, that's all real.
Oh, that's like my dad thought ECW was real.
Yeah. The NWA, that's real. And I was like, okay, so some of it's real, and then it's there. Okay,
but again, the experience is different than everybody, because I've encountered multiple people when they find I'm a wrestler be like, yeah, I stopped watching when I found it was fake. Like, that was fucking stupid. Like,
well, I did stop for a while because UFC came out, and I bought the first UFC pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And then what was Pancrase? I started getting tapes of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so this is real. I can't watch somebody jump off the top rope and bulldog somebody else as they stand there and wait for it to happen.
Sure.
This is BS. I can't watch it anymore. And I stopped watching for a while. And when I say a while, maybe a month.
Yeah.
But maybe not. It was probably around a month. I was done. And then I went back to it because, I wanted to know what was going on. And when I heard the curtain call happen, I was a little bit older. I was in my late teens by then.
Yeah.
But it made me more interested.
Sure.
I wanted to see what the hell happened.
Well, again, it's like, listen, like, not everybody has to, like, break the fourth wall necessarily, which I don't feel like I wouldn't call that breaking the fourth wall. If anything, I feel like, I don't know, not insulting the fans' intelligence and kind of letting you in a little bit more was, like, the right way to go. I think I would, like, I don't want someone to tell me that it's fake while I'm watching it, because I wouldn't want that in a movie. But I think the fans now are so invested is because, like, they understand, like, Triple H made some sort of line in the documentary. It's like they treat wrestling fans like they're stupid, but they're not stupid. Like, they're just informed enough and invested enough to essentially suspend their disbelief and, like, go along on that ride. And it's like, sometimes I'm more interested and intrigued by how a movie is made than the movie itself. I've watched documentaries about how a movie was made that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know. There's like some intrigue by it, like how the sausage is made, right?
Sausage. Why are you into sausage so much?
Well, I was just thinking about DX and
And their sausages that they ate.
Yeah.
That means they're gay.
Yeah. Rod Destiny thought they were gay because Triple H had a
it was grilling a hot dog.
He said, "Suck the cook," So
Yeah.
it's like that meant they were gay together.
Hey, something about sausages being made. Oh,
Something about Emily?
no. Rhea Ripley is married to Buddy something,
Yeah.
and Dom is married to somebody else, and they're, that's all over the internet.
Yeah.
They share photos of their weddings and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not any less intrigued, and I wasn't any less intrigued when they were having their relationship on screen.
Well, there you go.
I was still into it, and I'm still into it when the story turned and he went to live then.
Right.
Because we were waiting for that. I think we're at that point.
One of the big turning points for WCW obviously was Bash at the Beach in 1996, which they touch on. Bruce Prichard thinks that's the moment that solidified WCW as in control. They also talked about for a second how Vince had the opportunity to turn Hulk Hogan heel if he would have wanted to, but he didn't. I don't know if a heel Hulk Hogan would have worked in the WWF at that time. What are your thoughts on that?
No way. I'm with you 100% on that. Although somebody can probably make an argument, and I can be swayed, but I just don't see it, man. I do, but I didn't see Hogan turning heel and that being successful.
Look at it like this, though. Imagine a world where Hulk Hogan turns heel at Bash at the Beach 96, but there's no Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Yeah. And think about like
and the proposal, like he would have went to Kevin Sullivan's Dungeon of Doom.
No,
it wouldn't have worked.
No, take Kevin Nash and Scott Hall out of it, and imagine Hogan doing the same thing he was doing, but without them around him. And imagine him wrestling the Giant at Hog Wild 96.
Okay.
Where he wins the title and spray paints NWO, okay? I want you to watch how much that match fucking sucks. And how the majority of Hogan's matches as a heel fucking suck.
Yeah.
Really, really bad. Like
I remember.
I don't know if it was the Hog Wild match or it was another match with the Giant where he's wearing fingered gloves and he's doing back rakes.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they're selling it and it's like, dude, he's all right, come on, man.
It was almost like he was insulting us to our faces.
And if you don't watch Hog Wild, skip to NWO Sold Out and watch that match with him and the Giant. One of the worst matches you ever see. Hogan and Piper inside the cage at Halloween Havoc 97. Dog shit awful, okay? There were so many horrible, horrible bad guy Hulk Hogan matches. It was the presentation and who he was surrounded with that made the bad guy character work. And I can't imagine a scenario where Hulk Hogan would have been given like a heater or multiple heaters or been in a stable because they just didn't do that around that time in the 90s WWF.
I think that Hogan would have been terrible in WCW as a heel.
Well, he was.
Well, I mean, by himself.
Oh, yeah.
But I was thinking, who would win between heel Hulk Hogan and babyface Hulk Hogan?
Who?
Is that a podcast for another time?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because also, I was like, man, Hogan might have been the best heel because of his turn and because of his association with the NWO.
Sure.
But I think Ric Flair has long been regarded as the best heel. And this is a Vince McMahon podcast, so Vince McMahon, not a full-time wrestler, but all-time best heel. Can we agree on that?
I would say so.
But working heel, is it Flair?
Yeah, probably.
And then who? So then it would be Flair against who's all-time babyface?
I mean,
Sting, all-time best
Sting or
babyface.
maybe Steamboat, who never
Okay.
was a heel.
But they both worked with Hogan, or both worked with Flair.
That's also true.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's Flair that got everybody over.
Really
Because
did.
then Flair had to turn babyface in order for Hogan to be as successful of a heel as he was.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't have had two top heels, and also you had to have that NWO versus Horseman type deal, which I thought they fumbled. This
They
isn't
really
a
did.
podcast
Yeah,
about
they
that,
really
though.
did.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, I feel like the only cool moment of that was like when Mr. Perfect slammed the cage door on Flair's face and like joined the NWO, and there was like potential for substance there
Yeah.
to do something with that, like
Yeah.
momentum, like and obviously with the impersonation of the NWO doing the Horseman, but they never really got carried as far as it could. But
No, and then the thing that ruined a perfect turn for me was that they had already talked about it in the Torch
no.
or the Observer. I can't remember which one, but yeah, one of my sheets it said, "Expect Kurt Hennig to slam the door on Ric Flair's head
Yeah.
at War Games."
Yeah, well, that'll ruin it for you. It's basically everything leading up to Montreal with like just the facts that Vince wants you to think about it. They don't really elaborate on the stuff that they probably could have, like how Brett could have dropped the title to anybody else, how he wanted to drop it to anybody else, how he specifically just didn't want to lose in Montreal. They really paint it again for a hit piece on Vince. They sure did try to paint Vince like he was the good guy in this situation, but the crowd turned on Vince after the whole thing was said and done.
They shit on a lot of people worse than they shit on Vince. We talk about Lex Luger, Bret Hart. You know, Eric Bischoff got shit on quite a bit.
Yeah.
A lot of guys. Ted Turner. Hey, I just beep 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 beep
What's
beep
that?
beep beep. Breaking news.
What's up?
I just got a text message from our man on the street, our reporter, if you will.
Okay.
Eric.
All right.
He says, tell Greg to make sure he records his voice this time.
Thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate that.
You should put that other one up. Hey, and it was Dean Chard's birthday.
It was Dean Chard's birthday.
Do you remember that? Did you guys say that in the episode that you re-recorded?
I did.
Oh, okay,
I
good.
did.
I didn't listen to it because I'm not on it.
Well, yeah. But also, I can't put up the episode where it's just you talking to yourself.
I think it's great.
No.
I think people would like it.
No.
I think people tune in for that.
Episode 4.
Yes.
Oh boy, we've been going an hour 37 minutes at this point.
Not the first time I've done that.
Yeah, well, it might be actually.
Yeah, you're
It's
probably
usually
right.
minute 37 was I think
Whoa!
your previous tops from what I heard from the ladies. A lot of more WCW stuff. We get some interviews from people that we don't normally hear interviews from, like Bonnie Hammer, who was the VP of Original Programming at USA Network.
Tugboat.
Tugboat is not in this documentary. It would have been interesting.
They should
I
have
think.
asked him about Chic Tugboat.
We hear about this Stone Cold Steve Austin guy who ends up becoming one of the biggest draws in the history of professional wrestling.
See, and they go right into, he went to ECW, which I thought it was great. They gave him the credit for ECW, the credit for making Steve Austin have an edge. But then they go right into, like, he became Stone Cold Steve Austin. It wasn't that he was the ringmaster.
No.
It wasn't that Vince's great big idea was to make him the ringmaster, a name that he had copywritten for 12 years by that point.
essentially, this episode is just basically Austin versus McMahon and how those characteristics of Mr. McMahon might have been bleeding into his real life. But again, we never delve any deeper than what's on the surface and what we saw in storyline, which is why I think, again, like, it's hard to even say this is for the non-wrestling fan or a casual viewer, because, again, like, I don't know, if you're going into this thinking you're going to get some true crime documentary, like, which I was thinking because I like true crime documentaries and I also happen to like wrestling, you're not going to get that with this piece. You're going to be stuck in episode 4 watching the retelling of a storyline between Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin. So if you're not into wrestling, you might not find that very interesting. You know, like, I don't think, looking at the recap here, I don't remember any nuggets specifically.
I am not a nugget.
Sable is discussed in this episode.
Yeah.
And I believe this is the episode where they talk about her coming back to the company, how she leaves because of a sexual harassment lawsuit. She comes back. I forgot about it. They showed footage of they did a promo when she came back in 2003 where Sable's on the table and Stephanie basically calls her out. Like, it almost seems like a Vince edict where he's like, I'm going to rehire her. But then she's going to have to be in the background of a promo where right in front of her we talk about how she sued the company for sexual harassment, but now she's back to be my plaything. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just
how
really...
she's back to get sexually harassed.
Yes, it's very disturbing. Also, this is where we find out that Vince is being... sort of supervised by Paul Heyman off camera because he doesn't remember the Sable situation supposedly, and he goes basically it's like I don't remember the lawsuit. All I know is she came back to work. You know what I mean? So it's like even if I did know all the details, I'm not going to talk about it, and also doesn't matter because guess what? She came crawling back. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like very interesting. This is where by the end of the episode we talk about, you know, Brett leaving, obviously going to WCW. And then there was Owen, right? And it's we start to talk about...
wasn't that a shirt?
There was.
And then there was Owen.
The Blackheart shirt, you know. And it was a good shirt. Very rare shirt to come by the way. And we talk about Over the Edge 1999 and the Blue Blazer thing. We obviously know what happened, but so here,
I hated seeing that episode.
So here's the soundbite from that. Essentially, it's Vince basically rehearing the Brett interview where he talks about, you know, if it was Shane getting scraped off of the mat, I don't think he would have wanted the show to go on. And Vince essentially says, whether it would have been Shane or heck, if it was even me, scrape me off the mat, I'd want the show to go on. And also his justification is, well, it was dark in the arena, so no one saw Owen fall, so that's why it was okay for the show to go on. Again, as a reminder, once the man fell and died in the ring, we don't know how it happened. It becomes a crime scene.
Yes.
So I don't know how anyone outside of the company, how anyone from the arena didn't go, hey, who's running the show?
Yeah,
this can't go on now. It's crazy because, again, at 13 when it happens and you're hearing these interviews and you're like your brain's still forming and you don't really understand things, and you hear this guy on TV that also owns a company goes, well, you know, the show must go on, and we didn't want to have to stop the show. Could have been riots and blah, blah, blah. You go, well, yeah, you know, that could have happened. You know, we don't want a crowd rioting, you know, after seeing a man die. Like, as a kid, I'm like, yeah, it's a hard call. As an adult, I'm like, if my friend died, no, the show's over.
See, and I always go back to when Wally was the worst I've ever seen him was when...
PWO Walt.
Yep. Was when he said, after you were taken out of an ambulance from a legitimate injury where we weren't sure if you were going to make it, if you had were bleeding in the brain or whatever. Yeah. And he said, well, guys, he huddled us up in the locker room, said the show must go on. Yeah. And Johnny Gargano said, nope.
I think
not with me. I'm leaving.
Because we're starting to talk about attitude here, I think this is where we get the supercut, which I think is like one of the production highlights of the whole docuseries, where Vince tries to justify the Attitude Era by, well, no one died, and then they cut to Triple H smashing The Rock inside of a casket, and they show a clip from the Buried Alive match, and he goes, no one was raped, and then they cut to the clip of Vince going to Triple H, come on out here, you rapist.
Yeah.
And then they cut to, he's like, no, we didn't use any guns or knives. And they cut to Pillman's got a gun, Austin breaking in the house, and he goes, it's still a family product, but maybe for an adult family. What the fuck does that even mean? An adult family?
And
also,
I'd like to press him on that then. What are you talking
But also, so you're telling me that in 1998 then you guys stopped marketing toys and video games? Or were those just specifically for adults? Can we go back and look at the packaging?
Every
Did it
time
say
that they said that the toys were not for people over 30 or whatever, and that they were just for kids.
Yeah.
I always think of you and how you're still collecting to this day.
But here's the thing. Back in the 90s, it wasn't necessarily an in thing for adults to buy toys.
Right.
But my generation is the generation that grew up and was like, oh, we're going to buy toys. And marketing people know that this is that generation that has money and will do that, which is why they market like all these Hasbro style figures that I buy on the packaging. I haven't tried to play with them, but they purposely market them as not a toy because they don't want people taking them out of the packages expecting to take their fucking Mabel from Men on a Mission figure that's been made by a bootleg company and like bang it against another toy because it's like it's not created for that. It's created as a collectible. Yes. So that's kind of the mindset. I'm not going to go. We're running short on time here, but basically, like in the next couple episodes, one of the more intriguing things that we find out about is again, which is what I would want to pour deeper into, and the psychology behind it. Vince obviously yearned for the love and affection of his dad. He never got it, and he never questioned on it. So we fast forward, and in the last couple episodes, we learn about his relationship with Shane, and Shane. We've clowned a little bit on the show and talked about how, the fucking Shane injury and like him putting himself over in that last Rumble before he gets fired from the company or whatever. But he comes off as a great guy. Mm-hmm. The most likable McMahon in this series. And it's very sad that kind of the story here is Shane trying to do whatever it takes to get the affection of his father. And you would think that Vince would be sensible enough to realize, like, that's what I went through, so I wouldn't want to put my kid through that. And, like, there's nothing wrong with, like, making your kid work hard for the opportunities that they're given, right? Which, like, it sounds like in order for them to rise within the company, we know that Shane and Steph had to do, like, work the merch stands and do stuff for merchandising. Or Shane was a ref for a while. They did stuff behind the scenes until they eventually started to get their higher positions in the company. But some of the stuff that Shane had to do, a lot of the stuff that he did, the high-risk shit that he did, which is most wrestlers would not have done, like fall off things, jump off of things, jumping off the cell at WrestleMania 32. Clearly he did that just for that hug that he gets from Vince in the middle of episode 6. And you can see Vince mouthing, like, that was fucking awesome. I love you. Mm-hmm. I love you too, Shane, and it's like, and you could tell Shane getting emotional. Shane coming back in Detroit before that match is announced, it was very emotional for Shane. Like, you could tell Shane is incredibly passionate about wrestling, and, they don't go into enough detail, but Shane had his ideas. He's around the age that Vince was when he took over the WWF, and, Shane thought he was going to get control in like 2009, 2010. Vince wasn't letting go of the reins, so that's why Shane left to do his own thing. And clearly, when he came back,
What year did Shane leave?
Pretty sure it was 2009 or 2010.
Okay, and then he came back 2000. What was it?
2017.
That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah, so he was gone for a good while. I want to bring this up though. Shane fell off a lot of stuff, went through the glass with Kurt Angle.
Yeah.
Took a lot of physical punishment.
The worst, I think it was like the first and probably still the scariest, is him falling backwards at SummerSlam 2000 with Steve Blackman. Like, he didn't jump. You know what I'm saying? Like the idea that, like, but, like, dude, not looking backwards like that, that's fucking dumber. At least, like, if you're dropping an elbow, you can kind of try to position it. We
always criticize the guys in AEW for always looking back before they fall through something.
Not Shane McMahon.
So, but what I want to say is he did all that. The bump on his head from when he went into the glass at King of the Ring.
Again, I'll say it a million times. That match and Hell in a Cell with Foley and Undertaker, because of the level of brutality and those guys still going through it, it never stops being crazy.
Right. So now Shane gets a great ovation.
Yeah.
And a great reaction when he comes out, when he comes back. And pretty much every time he comes out to the ring.
Yeah.
Stephanie spoke in a high-pitched voice at times.
Yes.
Maybe took a tenth of the punishment.
Mm-hmm.
If that, would she have one match where she was in a lead pipe match with her dad, street fight?
I mean, she had a few matches.
Okay, yeah, but
nothing to the level of Shane.
Right. So, would you say she is the more over McMahon or on par with her brother?
I think they're both over in their own ways,
so she didn't have to do any of that. And we see throughout the video, her and Vince, they're affectionate with each other. She gives him a lot of kisses and a lot of "I love you, Dad."
Yeah.
We don't get that with Shane. We get one hug.
Well, again, I think it goes back to, what did he call Shane? Shane is the more conservative of the family when it comes to, him not being a fan of his mother, Linda, pretending to be drugged and watching him make out with various members of the roster, women's wrestlers, or him not very much liking his sister having to battle Vince on pay-per-view, or the insinuation that perhaps maybe Shane or Vince has impregnated his sister. He doesn't really like those ideas, doesn't really think they're cool or necessary. So I think that's where it's kind of the clash comes, right? It's like Vince is like this wild guy who thinks you could do anything, and Shane's like, at some point you can't blur the lines anymore. And
right.
I think that's what creates the issues. One thing I want to talk about that's important before we move on from this is, like, I think the most telling thing is the Paul Heyman story about witnessing a dispute between Shane and Vince, and basically they're eating dinner. And
this is the best part of the documentary.
I agree, and because it's also, when Paul Heyman says it, there's a specific line in this quote that he says that I'm like, I could see Vince saying that.
Oh, for sure.
Because they're having a creative dispute. Shane wants something really bad, very passionate about it. Vince says, "You'll have to kill me for that. You'll have to kill me to make that happen." And so then, as they're eating dinner, he takes a steak knife and he hands it to Shane. He says, "Go ahead, right here," and he points to his heart. And he says, stab me with the dagger. If that's what you really want, take me out. And if you do it, I'll know you're man enough for the job. And if you don't do it, I'll know that you aren't man enough. And I'll have to evaluate that too. Something like that. I'll have to evaluate that too, where I'm like, that is a Vinceism if I've ever heard one. And then he said, or you could buy me out like I bought out my dad, and you'll have to get me out of the way, just like I would have had to get my dad out of the way if he wasn't doing the things that I wanted him to do. Which also, while that statement is very profound and dramatic and psychotic, I think it's important to remind you that we find out earlier that Vince didn't really use any of his own money to buy out his own dad, so it seems kind of unfair to have to ask Shane to completely buy out his dad.
Agreed.
Yeah. Very insane.
Yes. Well, they're a dysfunctional family, but a successful one.
I think as we wrap this up here, basically, if you were expecting a documentary about the sexual exploits of Vince McMahon and the allegations, you only get that in the last 30 minutes, essentially, of episode 6. And it just feels like there's so many things that deserved more time devoted to that, which it feels like, again, this last episode is just kind of, we got to really fix this one based on the timetable because they originally had a finished product, but then the allegations started coming out, so then they switched up some stuff. And I really feel like while they talk about the Ashley Massaro thing, we should have spent a lot more time on that. While they mention the Janelle Grant stuff, holy shit, they should have spent more time on that. I mean, they don't even bring up John Laurinaitis, which I find peculiar.
Yeah.
I wonder if they even interviewed John Laurinaitis for anything. Like, it just there's a lot. Like, for some reason, Meltzer keeps saying, hold your thoughts until you see the final episode. As if, like, there's going to be some big telling thing. Like, it's like, okay, it was all worth it at the end. I don't feel like it was. Because at the end of the day, I just don't feel like these accusations got enough time. And obviously after the allegations came to light and Vince resigns a couple times or whatever, he stops agreeing to do interviews. Go figure. And overall, as I said, if you don't have Netflix, I wouldn't say that you have to go out of your way to purchase Netflix to watch this docuseries. I don't know. I felt like the way they did it, they could have made this a 2-hour episode thing, and it would have been fine. But again, you would have felt like they left a lot out. Like, boy, they should have made a docuseries out of this and covered more. So there's really no. There's some kernels of stuff that you get out of this, but as I said in the beginning, just more questions than answers. They should have went a lot deeper on this, and I don't think we will ever truly know what Vince McMahon wants us to think is the real Vince McMahon, but I think who the real Vince McMahon is a very trauma-filled individual that grew up in a time where you didn't address that trauma. He says very often, this happened, and I didn't look back. I moved on. And I think it's important to state that at the beginning of that first episode before we wrapped up here, one of the other big lines is him having 3 computers in his head.
Yeah.
And they ask him what one of the computers is thinking about right now. And by the way, he's essentially just describing attention deficit disorder, but apparently he doesn't know what that is. So
probably doesn't believe in it.
He probably does not, and he can't focus. And he said the other one is thinking about sex.
Yes.
We didn't even talk about the CTE thing. The concussions. Chris Benoit, they addressed that. He addressed Undertaker losing at WrestleMania. And so let me ask you something. Have you ever been put in a situation in wrestling where it was so traumatizing that you thought you had a concussion because you had to lose when you didn't want to, but as it turns out, the trauma of losing affected you so much that you just blacked out? Because that's what Vince claims happened with the Undertaker.
Yeah, I don't think that I could see that happening.
The trauma,
right,
of the streak ending. 21-0.
Yeah, it was a long streak. But also, from what I understand, Undertaker had already picked Brock Lesnar to be the one that beats him.
No, from what what Undertaker said, he said he didn't think Brock needed to beat him.
I think Undertaker's a liar.
You think so?
Yeah.
So there's I don't know. This was an interesting piece, but overall, I just think with the opportunity they had to get some stuff out of Vince, just feels like very squandered.
Yes.
Your overall thoughts?
I feel the same as you, and I don't even think I dislike this docuseries as much as I do as we review it now.
Yeah.
Like now I'm like, yeah, I really wasted my time with this one. Just so we could, talk about it here, I guess is worth the time. But I didn't find out much new that I didn't know. And I'm left with more questions than answers.
Real quick before we wrapped up.
We got some questions.
Just some of the comments we got on social media from
Okay.
Patreon members and others. Juan Ortiz says he is just as much of an asshole as I imagined he was prior to his current legal issues. Josh Newman says, do you believe in CTE? Also, do you believe in Joe Hendry? I don't want to say his name because I don't want him to appear when I'm pooping. He did say JH, to be fair. I do believe in CTE. I think part of the reason why some people might not is the idea that you can only really study CTE when the person is dead. However, from all of my readings, they are actively trying to find out ways to do so when a person is alive, and I think that's going to help save a lot of lives. And CTE, whether you believe it or not, concussions are definitely a real thing, and the amount of concussions that I know I personally have suffered, it scares me.
Yeah, well, that football player, the other McMahon, Jim McMahon.
Yeah.
I believe he had CTE.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to study part of his brain. He was able to maybe get something like a stem cell.
Yeah.
And he's doing much better.
Well,
I don't know
awesome.
if you know that to be true or not.
I didn't know about that.
But I've heard there's steps being taken right now.
Also, I feel like if someone didn't believe in CTE, some of those interviews were filmed 4 years ago, and I would imagine that either A, things could have been cut a certain way, and B, I mean, we've learned a lot in the last 4 years. So
yeah.
Dean Chard says, what's the most outrageous thing Vince said on it? Well, boy, I would probably have to pin it down to that Rita Chatterton thing, because he's essentially, I feel like he's admitting to
the statute of limitations,
some pretty big wrongdoings without admitting to some pretty big wrongdoings. Eric says, marry, fuck, kill, French toast, pancakes, waffles. That is not a Vince question.
Wait. French toast.
Don't answer that.
Oh, okay.
Jenny Blanchett says, it's all so much worse than I imagined. This is the question I keep asking myself. Now that we know, what do we do? Not TKO, not WWE, but the fans. Do we just keep watching as if none of it mattered? I feel that's what will happen regardless, but ugh.
But he's not there anymore, and I don't know. I mean, you've talked about this in the past. You still love R. Kelly's music.
I
You still
didn't say it.
You still love Hulk Hogan's philosophies on life.
Listen, I think the only thing that really this Joe Schumacher, whatever the fuck his name is, John Schumacher, the only thing he really contributed in that documentary of value is like one of the better closing lines is like, it is possible that this guy, yes, created a world that we all love, right? That has given us so many great memories. But he clearly is also a very traumatized individual. He had a horrible upbringing that he never truly addressed. And could also be a sexual deviant. And just a lot of, he could be a very bad person, I guess, to sum it up. And, there is not ever just truly good or truly evil. And somewhere in the middle. And so, and listen, the scariest part is like all of these guys that are being outed now. I just watched based on the recommendation of Candice LeRae, growing up, I was I wouldn't say a big Marilyn Manson fan, but I really enjoyed some Marilyn Manson music. I'm a new metal kid, and so did Candice, and she recommended me a few months back to watch this Manson documentary that was on Hulu. And I watched it over the weekend, and again, it's another situation like R. Kelly, like Diddy, like Vince. Who am I forgetting? Diddy, Vince, I guess Manson would be the other one. He's got numerous interviews where just out in the open, like he's like doing this round table with Andy Dick, and Andy Dick's like, yeah, we were at a party and fucking Manson over here, he's like, talking to this girl who was barely 18, and then he's like, might have been more, might have been less, and he's like, less? It can't be less. That's not good. Yeah. And then he's just talking about how, like, yeah, my publicist told me I shouldn't be talking about this, and then Andy was like, well, by the end of the night, she was tied up and she was crying, and it's like, so you watch this docuseries. I don't know if you know any of this, but like, I mean, he's making these girls like do like scarification to themselves where they have to carve like an M near their vagina for Marilyn Manson, or like carve specific things on their body to like prove that they care about him, or like they have to like drink his blood and shit, and like it's just super fucked up. But the point of it is, like, they were never hiding it. It was always out there. Just now all of a sudden we're like, hey, you know what? This seems a little weird, and we should probably do something about it, So, I don't know. I don't think if WWE was actively trying to defend this Vince thing, then maybe there would be an issue. But clearly they have separated themselves. And while this isn't the hit piece on Vince that I thought it was going to be, I think it was a very subtle way to have Netflix say, like, yeah, this dude's not involved anymore.
I went into it thinking Netflix may have wanted to start a certain way, but due to events that happened and then them getting the rights to WWE Raw, they might not have wanted to continue that way.
Sure.
So it seemed like what we got was some kind of compromise where it wasn't even that bad. It wasn't the worst thing in the world on Vince, and it wasn't this great piece about what a good man he is.
They put a lot of money into it, so it probably was a thing where they're like, well, we just can't fucking shelve this. Mm-hmm. Let's just get it out there. And let's do it before Raw's on Netflix.
Yeah.
So
essentially it was an advertisement. Like, Vince was here, he's not anymore, so this is the Triple H era.
Corey Frizzle says, finish episode 4. Owen Hart portion is sickening, and Vince's lack of accountability forcing the show to go on. Owen's friends wrestling in his blood.
Yeah, that was gross. Very disturbing.
Well,
for me
so I want to debunk that real quick. I too have thought for years that it was Owen's blood. Not remembering, and I have the pre-show along with the original pay-per-view on DVD, but I must not have watched it in a long time. Blue Meanie just talked about it on a podcast. Blue Meanie participated in one of the Heat segments, which involved the bloodbath from the Brood. As you remember, they would do the bloodbath on the outside of the ring, okay? Mm-hmm. Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy and Michael Hayes, they end up taking the bloodbath on the outside of the ring. However, Matt Hardy is covered in blood, and he puts his arm on the ring apron. So what you're actually seeing now, I can't say for certainty that there isn't some portion of blood from Owen. It's not impossible, but what you're seeing for the most part is remnants from the bloodbath from Matt Hardy's arm on the apron. So it's not Owen's blood that you're seeing on the apron. So I guess that's important to put that out there, and I think it's it doesn't justify what happened, but Blue Mini did share that story recently. So
okay, well, I feel much better about the whole thing then.
All right, shut the fuck up. All right, so that's it for this week. Is there anything we didn't cover from this? I think we covered it pretty in depth, and this is the longest episode we've done in a long time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast. We are going to be doing a bonus episode over on patreon.com/Iron Wrestling. We're going to talk about only wrestlers. We're going to be talking about some of the recent events from Raw and SmackDown, probably some AEW stuff. What did you want to talk about in this bonus episode?
Whatever you want to talk about.
No, I thought you had some stuff in mind.
There was a automotive place to try to rip me off.
You want to talk about just on Patreon, or you want to bury them next week on the free show?
I want to bury them at both, but
why don't you
Automotive Specialty Services.
Okay.
So
where are they located?
Avon, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a free oil change from them, and when I took the car in, they tried to charge me almost $2,000. They found some things wrong with my vehicle. So to find out how I found out that was not the case and that they were trying to rip me off, tune into next week and probably Patreon. But yeah, that's it. If somebody wants to find you, Greg, how can they find you on the social media?
Well, they can find me at Gregory Iron on X, but I barely use it. So find me on Instagram at Gregory_Iron.
I used to use X a lot. This was like in
2000.
2000.
We don't want to hear that. Facebook.com/TheHandicappedHero. If you want to book me for pro wrestling, motivational speaking, or a podcast, you could do so. Podcast seminars. You want me to book me for seminars? Podcast too, I guess. Just message me there. Actually, this weekend.
You're doing stuff.
I'm going to be at actually this Thursday. I'm going to be at the premiere of The Ref Didn't See It in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. So if you're not doing anything that night, 7 p.m., come on out and see.
I just met her.
All right, come out and see the world premiere of The Ref Didn't See It, a beautiful documentary created by my good friend from Kayfabe News, Colin Hunter. If you follow Kayfabe News, you can find all the information for that event this Thursday. And I may or may not be in Buffalo, New York on Saturday night. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Do some research and see if you can find the show running in Buffalo, New York on Saturday, because I might be showing up there. And ProWrestlingTees.com/Gregory Iron for my T-shirts, Aaron T-shirts, Iron on Wrestling T-shirts, all out of print stuff that you won't find anywhere else. Cameo if you want to shout out. And what didn't I plug? I don't know. I think I got everything. What do you want to plug?
Hey, I want to plug the Joe is Hungry channel on YouTube.
Jesus Christ.
I love that guy, man. He weighs out the food and everything. So, and then you can find me on Instagram at Fair to Aaron, on X at Fair to Air, and then on Truth Social.
Jesus Christ.
At It's All Wrestling.
Okay.
Because that's how I feel about politics. I think it's all wrestling, brother.
All right. Well, this is quite the episode. Until next week, I guess we'll give you a kiss. Goodbye.
I don't know if we should do that after watching this full Vince McMahon episode.
This is a consensual situation.
Wait a minute. Not there.
What?
Huh?